Could I ask everyone to please take a seat? Welcome to Empower You this evening. It's nice to see that you braved this weather and came out. We appreciate that. I'm Betty Overstreet. I'm the marketing director for Empower You. And just want to go over a few things. We do have online attendees. We welcome those also. When towards the end of our class, we will have a question and answer period. If you have a question, if you would please raise your hand and let one of us bring a microphone to you so that everyone can hear your question, and especially those online can hear you. We're also, for those of you that have never been here before, Empower You was founded by Dan Ragnall. He is also the owner of Frame USA. His goal or his vision was to present free classes around the city. We now have most of them here because thanks to Dan, we have our own studio. But we try to present a lot of classes on many diverse issues. So if you look at our calendar, you can see we pretty much reached that goal. We are nonprofit, run by donations only. So towards the end of the class, we do pass buckets around. Anything that you would like to donate is very much appreciated to help us with our cost. Next, I'd like to introduce Nita Thomas. She's our executive director, and she's going to tell you about some upcoming classes.
Hi, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight too. Certainly appreciate it. And I'll tell you about a few classes we have coming up that you might like to see. Next week we have a honey of a bee, and that is about the honeybees. And does anybody here love to garden? And spring is coming, and you know how important pollination is. So this would be a really good class to see before spring and before you start planting. And then after that, we're going to have the history of fake news with Peter Bronson. I'm sure some of you here remember Peter Bronson when he was with the Enquirer. And I'm sure most of you believe there is fake news. So Peter Bronson is going to educate us on that. And maybe he'll tell us what it was like when we had real news. I don't know. And then the week after that, on April the 12th, or that same week, we're going to have Morgan's Great Run Around Cincinnati. And this is a history class, and people always seem to like the history class. And it's about a Confederate brigadier who actually ran a raid into the North during the Civil War. And it's very interesting. And then we have open mic night. We have any musicians here? No? You know any musicians? If you do, have them look at open mic night. They can win some money. How's that? And then we're going to have Networking 101 at Mount St. Joe. And this is really good for younger people especially. So if you know anybody that's younger and trying to learn how to make contacts and struggling with that, please send them over to this class at Mount St. Joe. It's going to be really great. And then we have Painting with a Twist, which is when you go, you get to paint. I'm going to try this, and I can't paint at all. So I don't know how this one's going to turn out, but they say everybody can do this, and it's fun. And I'll just give you a couple more. Beverly Hills Supper Club. Everybody here remember Beverly Hills? That one should be interesting. And then In the Garden with Ron Wilson. So see, after you come to Honey of a Bee, then you can come and listen to Ron, and you'll know exactly what to plant for the bees. How's that? So I would like to introduce Dan Ragnall, who is our founder, our managing board member, and makes all this possible.
Thank you. I'll let you take that with you. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm glad you could be here tonight for our doubleheader, where we're going to talk about the library, and then we're going to talk about net neutrality. It's good to see everybody online tonight. Welcome. And hey, it's been a big day at Empower You. We had a session this morning. It's kind of a doubleheader. Okay, so we're going to talk about two sessions tonight, but this morning we started off for 3.5 hours where the Attorney General presented a class to 90 people in here on how to be more transparent in government. It was a great session. 90 people got certified to do a better job governing. that's always a good thing. And Mr. Janis back there helped us put that together. It took about 2 years, and he did an incredibly great job putting it together. Thank you again, Mr. Janis. And I got this email this afternoon, and I just kind of wanted to read it to you. Nobody's seen it but me. But it was just one of those really nice emails that I thought I would share with you if I can find it. Among my thousands of emails, let's see, it's got to be here somewhere, I hope. Let's see. Now it's got to be here. Well, maybe I won't be able to do that. I'll tell you what, I'll find that and read it to you at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got a giveaway. Bill, would you be kind enough to bring up the tickets? And let's ask one of our guests to draw the ticket for us tonight. Anita, would you?
3072.
Last 3 digits, 3072. Mr. Steiny Vonderhaar, gift card to Frame USA for $25. You bet. So kind of the format for tonight is that we're going to start with the library. Each presenter is going to get about 10 to 12 minutes to present their side of the issue. And then we're going to ask some questions. About 7:40 or 7:45, we'll start net neutrality. So we got 2 people from the library here tonight on the library board. Elaine Fay is the Community and Government Relations Coordinator at the Public Library of Cincinnati in Hamilton County, and she acts as a liaison between the library and federal, state, and local government agencies. Libby Scott is the Internal Communications Coordinator at the Public Library of Cincinnati in Hamilton County. In her previous role as account executive at Wordsworth Communications, she worked with a variety of clients providing PR, social media, and internal communications expertise. So we're really glad to have you here. Come on up and we'll get started. Let's welcome them here.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here today. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about the library and our current state of funding, and to tell you why the library is asking for a levy on the ballot this coming May. The Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County is one of the oldest and busiest in the nation. We have 500,000 cardholders, with at least one cardholder in 80% of Hamilton County households. We provide valuable services in every neighborhood and community. We have 41 locations across Hamilton County, totaling more than 930,000 square feet of space. Our circulation has increased since the year 2000, and our circulation of digital items is among the highest in the nation. In 2016, customers borrowed, downloaded, or streamed 21.2 million items, making the library's circulation second highest in the country, behind only New York Public. Every year, thousands of children come to our library, our 41 locations in Hamilton County, for homework help and reading programs. We support small businesses and our local economy with job searches, meeting rooms, and online classes and training. And we provide nearly 20,000 free programs each year for residents of all ages. Our library has been recognized repeatedly with national awards. In 2013, we received the National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the nation's top honor for museums and libraries. And in 2017, we received our 5th straight 5-star library award from Library Journal. And our library has also been recognized with numerous state and local awards, including a Certificate of Achievement with Distinction from the State Auditor, demonstrating that our library is fiscally responsible. Our library currently has the lowest local funding of any major library system in the state. Our library's state funding has been cut by 26% since 2000. During that same time, our circulation has increased 60%, and our library has not increased its budget in nearly 20 years. Handing it over to Libby. Sure.
As Elaine mentioned previously, we have 41 locations across Hamilton County that total more than 930,000 square feet. And as she stated, we are one of the oldest library systems in the country. Our library has branches that are decades old, 7 are more than 100 years old. 2 of our oldest branches have never been renovated. We have 3 branches that were built between the 1920s and the 1930s, one of which was never renovated. And we have 10 branches that were built between the 1950s and 70s. 7 of them have never been renovated. Currently, major maintenance and renovations are funded at $2 million annually, which has not been enough to tackle the maintenance and renovations the library needs to complete. Library staff initiated an 18-month comprehensive review of facilities to determine the work that was needed across the system. System-wide, library facilities need $54 million worth of repairs, replacements, and renovations. Library staff held more than 40 community meetings at branches across the county to share what work was needed at their neighborhood branch and across the system. This levy is needed to meet existing facility and customer needs. The library is asking for $1 million to fund operating expenses and capital improvements for a period of 10 years. Without it, we face multi-million-dollar annual deficits and cuts. The cost is less than $3 a month per $100,000 of property value. With this levy, we can ensure that our library provides each community with a branch that is well maintained and up to date. We can ensure that all 40 branches are handicap accessible. 6 of them currently are not. We can repair and replace brickwork, roofs, windows, which is work that has been put off because of the lack of funding. We can purchase enough books, reference materials, CDs, and other materials for customers. We can continue programs and services like homework help and summer reading. We can continue to help Hamilton County residents look for jobs. And we will continue to provide computers, internet access, and digital materials to meet all of our customers' needs. Thank you so much for having us here today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if we've got any questions since we didn't use up our whole time. Anybody have any questions for our 2 guests right here? And do we have a microphone? Here it comes.
Mine isn't so much a question, but it's an ongoing complaint that I've had about the library and a suggestion on what you can do to save money. My problem, I patronize a very small library. I love the library. It's in Mount Healthy. It's about half the size of this room, but it used to have great selections and very friendly people, and I felt that it was one of the most efficient libraries in the system, even though they wanted to close it. However, lately it seems like I always go to the nonfiction section. And when I go there, I see up to 10 copies of the same book. And I've complained about this. I don't understand why first of all, they're wasting money by buying all these books of the same thing. And second of all, it's taking up space when they could put other books that I'm interested in, and they only have about 24 inches of space for nonfiction. They used to have 3 whole shelves. 3 or 4 foot shelves. And now it's about 24 inches. So I just don't like it. And I think it's a waste of money. And, oh, and the other thing is they buy all these copies, they tell me, because they have the demand for them. But I don't mind waiting for a book. Right now, I've been waiting for a book for about 3 weeks, which is fine. I'm one of 77 holes. And I'll wait. I have other books to read. I read about 3 books a week. And so I think you could reform, to save money, you could reform your buying system.
Would you like to make a response to that, or?
We can certainly take your concerns to the appropriate staff member, and if you'd like to give us your contact information, we'd be glad to get back with you.
Thank you. Other question?
My name is Leslie, and it seems to me we just did vote on a library levy recently. So I brought a copy of my property tax. I understand that this levy will approximately double what I'm paying to the library now at a time when the water rates have gone up. My school tax has gone up and everything. So I do understand that the library needs to keep facilities regulated, but in my township, there are 2 libraries within 5 miles of each other, 2 branches. So I do wonder about what the library is doing to cut costs.
That sounds like a question that could be answered by our fiscal officer. I can gladly take down your information and get back with you.
And I think we have a question online. Okay, right here.
Yes, I noticed that you had all these buildings that weren't renovated. Has there been any renovation done in the past with monies that you had? I mean, you seem to say that you didn't have any renovations, is what I'm reading.
No, we have 41 locations. Out of the 41 locations, it's 7 that have never been renovated, I believe. So no, not all of our, not everything has not been renovated, but we do have some branches that are over 100 years old that need renovations. We have 10 that have never been renovated.
Have any of the buildings been renovated in the past? Some of them have been.
Yes.
Question online.
Okay, we have 2 short online questions. First one is, does the library not have an endowment or trust established over its long history? And
Yeah.
the second one is, what have been the cost savings realized by self-service checkout of books?
We do have a foundation endowment. And as far as cost saving with books, I can't speculate on that question either, but I don't know if there's a way that the online people can send the questions to you that we can answer them.
Yeah, anybody who's got a question that you want an answer to, send us an email to info@empoweruohio.org, and we'll get you a question back from Elaine. Let's go ahead and have you sit down. We'll take the other part, and then we'll have a few questions at the end. Thank you very much, and we'll get you back at the end. Next, we're going to hear from Matt Wahlert. He currently serves as a member of the North College Hill Council and is president pro tem. He's also a member of the board of directors of the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments, Life Skills High School, and Riverside Academy. In addition, Matt is completing his 18th year of teaching advanced placement, U.S. politics, and advanced history at a local high school. So let's welcome Matt. You're good to go.
Thank you. Get everything in order here. All right, so I guess I'm good to go. Is this the advance?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so thank you very much for having me here today to speak about the library. I will start by saying that I'm a huge fan of the Cincinnati Public Library. With a PhD and 2 master's degrees, I've spent a lot of time in libraries, and Cincinnati does library very well. However, with this levy, there are some concerns that I'd like to share. When I say to people, hey, I'm speaking against the library levy, they kind of look for horns to see if I'm the devil or something, but I I love the institution. There's no arguing with all the awards they've received. However, I think there's some slight alterations that we can make as we move forward. So this is a little bit about why I don't support the levy. Traditionally, as many of you know, the state funded libraries completely. Ohio is one of only 2 states with that kind of model. Hawaii is the next closest. In the 2000s, Governor Kasich began to cut local funds, and among those funds were library funds. And that's when we had in 2009 the first ever local library levy. And this was designed to fill those gaps, to make up for some of the money that the state took away. At the time, one of the articles from the Cincinnati Enquirer noted, however, that there is no specific plan for the levy dollars. And I think this is a theme that we're going to see again. And it's no reflection on the library. I think it's a reflection in the times we are in right now, and the idea that the library is having to be kind of reflexive instead of proactive. This was renewed in 2013, as someone in the audience pointed out, for a 10-year term. I'm used to turning around and pointing at the PowerPoint. I guess that's a hard habit to break as a high school teacher and a university professor. This was brought to the ballot a year early. At the time, there was actually some discussion of making this a levy that would be perpetual. They would never ask for renewal. That was shot down. Around the same time that this was put on the ballot, there was about a $500,000+ fine amnesty program announced. Many voters had a little bit of an issue with this, because if you're going to come ask the voters for taxes, have the people pay the fines that have accumulated them over time. Now we have this ask for the additional levy. And as you can see, and as you heard from the questions, it's approximately a double. It's an additional $17 million a year to bring it up to $34 million a year from local funds. And that's for a 10-year term. Now this may sound a little bit odd to many of you, because many of our levy terms are 5, maybe even 7 years. The levy for the library is a 10-year term. One of the issues I have is with the levy process. Now, the Hamilton County Commissioners, many of you may know, they oftentimes vote on placing a levy on the ballot. With the library, however, that's not the case. This is no RC rule. Often as well, the Tax Levy Review Committee looks over the books, vets the levy, makes a recommendation. The TLRC doesn't have oversight power in the library. And as I mentioned, this is a 10-year versus a 5-year levy. And I think that's significant going forward. So why do we care about this lack of the Tax Levy Review Committee? They do an independent review of levy requests. They also require, and this is, I think, the added bonus to their review, the review committees, they require operations and management review and financial review that are independent as a watchdog for the public's money. In 2009, when the levy was first announced for the library, the TLRC actually offered an advisory opinion. In the advisory opinion, they said, yes, you need the money. It was taken away from you from the state. However, going forward, you need an outside consultant. You need outside consultants to review your operations and to have a look at the capital needs and put together a 5-year plan. Now, the library, as mentioned earlier, has done a lot of outreach, 40 community meetings, reaching out to the stakeholders, but it's largely been in-house within the library. We don't have many independent reviews. And when you're asking for your levy to be doubled, I'm sorry, you need an independent review. Inside the numbers, we kind of saw a little bit about this before, and the data is a little bit more recent, obviously, from the library, but this is from the reports at the auditor's office. As you can tell, from the end of 2013 until current, and I think it was 80% in the most recent slide, the percent of households in Hamilton County that have at least one person that uses the library has gone down. Now, I find some pause in this statistic, because if the Hamilton County taxpayers are paying the taxes, you know, it's free from anyone from Ohio can get a Hamilton County library card for free. And I understood that when the state paid the freight. But now that Hamilton County taxpayers are paying the freight, should I have to pay for somebody from Brown County, Clermont County, Butler County? But also there's an agreement with Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County where those folks can use the library for free as well, can get a free library card. And some of those libraries are the highest ranked in the state of Kentucky. So I would suggest that at a time when we're worried about the concerns of Hamilton County taxpayer dollars, that this is something that we need to look at. The fourth item I have are management concerns. And if you follow the drama surrounding the main building, the main building, the north building in the main branch, altogether the main branch is over 540,000 square feet. The library themselves, the management, the board of trustees said it's too big. The rule of thumb is 1 square foot per user. That would put the number of users in downtown and over the Rhine at over 500,000. There's not that many people that live down there. So the library decided they were going to close the north building, pursue selling it, maybe look at reusing it for something else, maybe renting it. And that process began, and they began to move the items out. In December, when they began to have some reaction from the community, they pressed pause, stopped, and said, we're not going to do that. We're going to move everything back in, and we're going to use the building. That suggests to me a lack of a unified long-term plan. And it was in reaction to a lot of citizen feedback. But the cost of keeping that open and not selling that building may in fact be this levy. And the other thing that they took a lot of heat from is that it became such a contentious environment that they actually had to hire a moderator to moderate the questions. So that's a management concern. And we talked about, and somebody asked the question regarding maintenance. So I learned of this phrase when I got in government called deferred maintenance. It means that we're not going to pay for it now. We're going to pay for it later because we're going to use that money for something else. That's what's going on in the library, deferred maintenance. And if you look at their hiring trends, there's a reason why that maintenance has been deferred. In 2009, at the time of the first levy, when we knew there were financial problems, there were 790 employees. 75 worked in facilities and maintenance. By 2016, we've increased the number of employees, and there's only 44 in facilities and maintenance operations. Is there any wonder why we have deferred maintenance that needs to be done? And the final issue is we hear a lot about cuts and how this will impact lending and things like that. This is no doubt a building levy. This is not operational. It includes $4 million for furniture, $2 million for interior plaster and paint, $2 million for new floors, $1 million for exterior painting. So my suggestion today is not that the library is doing a poor job. It's that we need to have assistance in managing and coming up with a unified plan for the future. The same thing that the Hamilton County Commissioners Tax Review Board asked for in 2009. So that concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you. Questions, we'll start out just for Matt, right here.
I'd just like to clear up circulation because I see that the number of people using the library is down.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense to me with all the electronic books and downloading so easy. I don't use it very much myself, although I still love it. But when they speak of circulation, maybe they can answer this. Is this just books or is this DVDs, games?
So circulation is actually at an all-time high, and I think they probably mentioned that in their presentation. 21 million and some change, basically. A lot of that is online downloaded. Okay. Approximately 40%, and this is an issue I have, are audiovisual things. Clermont County charges a nominal fee, I think $1 to take those out. There's some 7 million items per year that are rented that are audiovisual items that could be revenue enhancing if you just charged a nominal fee, $1. So in essence, you have taxpayers paying for someone else to take out a movie, many of which may be educational, many of which may not be, CDs, things like that.
My name is Leslie again. When I was little growing up in Clermont County, you had to pay $10 to get a Hamilton County library card. It was free in your own county, but not Hamilton County. And that was at a time when the state was paying, apparently. So I'm kind of confused that all these people can get free library cards in Hamilton County when I couldn't as a child.
So I actually went to double check this today, because if you look at the policies online at the Hamilton County Library, it says something like there's a $45 fee. But if you look in another place, it says no, if you live in the state of Ohio, it's allowed. So I called Columbus, Cuyahoga, Claremont, a couple others. And if you live in the state of Ohio, you can get a library card at those corresponding libraries for free. And that's also reciprocal to the Hamilton County. And as the number of people of Hamilton County residents that go down that use it, I think more and more outside the county, you have Hamilton County people paying the freight once again for people that are outside the county.
Got a question back here.
Yes, my name's Carl, and some people, including myself, have concerns about the salary of the director of the library. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I think that there are some issues when it comes to salary, and I'll also go one step further with a pension. Pensions that have been, I think that's another step to the reforms that are going to be, I think all cities and governments and units are going to have to do pension reform, and the library has a long-term liability in pension that's pretty hefty as well. That's where, again, when the commission, the Tax Review Commission said, get somebody independent in here to look at it, not suggesting they're doing anything wrong, because they're not, but to suggest that there could be some opportunities to save and to enhance the library service, and it really hasn't been done.
One other question is there another way to fund the library without asking for a tax increase? And here's something that just popped into my head. The Blue Ash Branch Library was built some years ago, and it's going to need some renovations, and the library people came out and spoke to the residents of Blue Ash. Unfortunately, I did not attend that meeting. But on the other hand, Blue Ash is undergoing a renaissance. They're building a lot of new condominiums, apartments in the downtown area of Blue Ash. I expect, more people are going to be using the library, but also those people should be paying more in taxes without the levy increase, just because they are residing in Blue Ash.
So, I mean, that's something, it's kind of outside my scope. Where I'm from in North College Hill, we haven't undergone that renaissance yet. I'm still waiting for the housing market to come back. And that's one of the reasons that inspires me to do this kind of thing, because it's just a couple bucks. Yeah, I get it. But for the people that I represent in my community, it makes a big difference.
Let's stop there. And Elaine and Libby, why don't you guys come up and we'll kind of open it up for anybody that has a question for any party. I know Mr. Janis, you had a question. We missed you earlier. So let's go, and then we can just pass the microphone back and forth as we go. Mr. Janis.
Hi, thanks. My name's Jay, and this is for either one of the two women, since you're with the library. And I apologize, I may have missed it in your slides, but as I understand it, the original levy was for 10 years, so we're not at the 10-year point yet. This proposed levy of yours, when I say yours, the library, as I understand it, would be an additional. And my question is, in taxes or increases or levies, frequently we all use the famous mythical $100,000 house as a basis. So apples to oranges, whatever. So what the current levy, what do we pay in the mythical 100,000 range? What do we pay as taxpayers for the current levy? And then going forward, what would we as taxpayers pay for the new levy that you're proposing? Thank you.
So the cost is less than $3 a month per $100,000 of property value. The specific number is $2.91. And that would be for this current levy. And the previous levy, I believe, is $3 per 100. So essentially, with both levies together, it would be $6 per month per $100,000 house.
So about $72 a year.
And then, the 2013 levy will obviously expire in 2023. And then at that point, it would be at the $2.91.
Other questions for our guests? Anybody have one?
I'm not sure.
Would say it's over 100,000. I was thinking 145 or so. It's a guess.
And just could you paint a picture for us, Elaine? If the levy does not pass, what's kind of the backup plan?
Well, if it doesn't pass, I can't speculate to what's going to happen. It's a multi-million-dollar annual deficits and cuts. You know, we talked about the current levy only replace losses in the state funding that we have seen we've gotten no, you know, our level of state funding is so low that the previous levies only replace those losses and is generating less than we're projected.
Other questions? Right here.
Yeah, Matt had mentioned in 2009 when the state of Ohio withdrew the state funding. That was almost 10 years ago. So if the new levy was effective 2019, it would be 10 years out. Are there fewer branches now than there were in 2009? Because we've really changed as a society and it's less, I never buy books anymore. I'm an ebook reader because I travel. I used to wait, I'd love hardbacks, but then they got too much to pack. So then I'd wait for the paperback, and now I don't do any back at all and just do the electronic downloads. It's, you know, to me that we are more, it's much easier to not go to a facility. So do you know if there's fewer branches now than there were 10 years ago?
There are not fewer branches, but as a Hamilton County resident, I'm with you. I use the ebooks all the time. But, you know, we do things at the branches like workforce development courses. We have, you know, preschool story times. So there are things going on in the branches. We are doing a lot of workforce development work right now.
And I'll surely say that Empower You has used many of the rooms at the library, and we are very appreciative because it's hard to have meetings that don't cost you a ton of money. And
I've used library.
That's a great, that is a great thing.
Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think the actual number since then has gone up. In 2015, there were 3 new libraries built from ground level up. And there were approximately 4 or 5 on that list that are barely used at all. And one of them, for example, is Miami Township. There are alternatives that are very close. In fact, in 2008, when this discussion was first held, the recommendation from a number of community leaders was to close some of those down and combine them. But since then, we've actually constructed 3 new. Clifton, St. Bernard and Bond Hill, Reading, 3 brand new buildings. And that, again, I think that speaks to the lack of a kind of a long-term comprehensive plan on what you want this to look like. Now, part of it is just the nature of how times have changed. When they took over the North building and spent $18 million or whatever it was years ago, it was packed. That number has gone down now because more people use some of the suburban sites or use online and things like that. So it's sometimes difficult to be 100% correct. But I think that the point that the Hamilton County Commissioners were making in 08 and 09 is that you guys need help with this. You need all the economic data. You're not in it alone, and that we treasure you as a community asset and we want to help.
We've got time for just a short last comment here.
Yes.
Can I
Yes,
speak to
absolutely.
that though? Those were not new branches. We did not add any branches. Those 3 branches replaced smaller storefront branches. So those were not. But they were new construction. They were new construction, but they weren't in addition to any branches.
Thank you. One last comment back here.
Yes, thank you, Elaine and Libby. My name's Carl, and I do appreciate the library. I love the library. One thing that I'm having a hard time dealing with, and it's not really your fault, is I used to like to go downtown on Sunday and park and utilize the downtown library all day on Sunday, whether it be for the maker space or the old newspapers to research genealogy. But once the city of Cincinnati implemented having to pay for parking down there from, I guess, 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock, I'm not able to drive down there and hang out all day and pay for parking. I just can't afford it. So there was something that was out of your control that change the dynamic of people using the library. And I'm being asked to vote for a new tax, and I feel that I'm not even able to use the library because I'm not able to get there and afford to pay the parking. So I really don't have a question for you. It's more of a comment. You might take that back to people. I don't know what your statistics are on the downtown library in terms of people not using it. I know the north building was being looked at to be sold, et cetera, but there might be some outside dynamics there.
Thank you. We've got one last question.
This is a question from an online viewer. The question is there any kind of separate governmental or other support for the Carnegie libraries?
No.
Okay. Let's thank our guests for coming tonight to talk to us about the library system. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you. Thank you, Libby. For everybody, really, I think this issue, the whole library levy, is kind of falling under the radar a little bit. And what I just want to let everybody know is that this presentation will be online for people to see tomorrow if you've got friends who couldn't be here tonight. And as long as Elaine and Matt are okay with your PowerPoints, we'd like to put those up on the website also and let people see those. So we're going to kind of transition into our next topic, which is net neutrality. And gosh, I found that email I kind of was talking to you about earlier. I just kind of want to read it because I got this afternoon. Here's what it says. It says, my name is Karen, and I recently attended an Empower You class. What a bargain for the money, which was free. Empower You is new to me, and I greatly appreciate that the classes are available, virtual, online, and free. What a terrific public service you're doing. I work full-time at an elementary school and go home exhausted, which makes it challenging for me to go back out in the evening. Thank you for what you're doing at Empower You. I'm hooked, Karen. So that was a great message. So we'll kind of transition. We're going to talk about net neutrality, and this is a hard topic. But it's one that I was on the radio with Brian the other day, and he said, "Well, what makes you choose your classes?" And this is one I'd heard about that I didn't really understand, so I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So thank you, Matt, and it's great to see you. So let's start. It's going to go fast, and if I go too fast and you have any questions as we go, please throw up your hand, and let's get started. So net neutrality, what is it? Is the internet in danger? What is net neutrality? We're going to start off with a little video that kind of explains it.
Net neutrality. It's a seemingly complicated hot button term. Net neutrality. It's a seemingly complicated hot button term, but it's actually based on a pretty simple philosophy that everything on the internet should be treated equally. Broadband providers shouldn't be able to decide which websites to block or to slow down. Let's look at an example. I pay for cable and internet through a service provider. So when I go online, I expect to be able to watch all the GOAT videos my heart desires. And when I go on Netflix, I expect to be able to binge House of Cards without any interruptions in service. But without net neutrality, there's nothing stopping my service provider from simply blocking websites or slowing down the streaming speeds of websites, like Netflix. And it's already happened. In 2007, Verizon blocked text messages from a pro-choice abortion rights group. Verizon said they had the right to prevent consumers' access to any groups the company might deem controversial or unsavory, though they quickly backtracked. And just last year, Comcast slowed Netflix's streaming speeds until Netflix paid for smoother streaming. Netflix accounts for more than 30% of internet streaming, and Comcast believed that they should be accountable for some of the infrastructure upgrade costs. In February, when Netflix paid up, speeds went back up, as you can see here in the red line. Here's an analogy. Let's say FedEx wants Amazon to give them money because Amazon packages take up a large portion of their shipments, and FedEx thinks that they should chip in for their truck repairs. To pressure Amazon, FedEx slows down their delivery time, but the consumer is the one who paid for the 2-day shipping in the first place, and the consumer is the one hurt by having her packages delayed. The FCC wants to establish clear rules to make sure that broadband providers can't do this. They plan to define the internet providers as common carriers under Title II of the Communications Act. Companies regulated under Title II can't discriminate what services they're providing to the consumer. It's why FedEx can't discriminate against Amazon deliveries. Democrats and President Obama strongly support these regulations. Many Republicans in the broadband industry see it as more unnecessary government oversight. They worry the regulations will prevent innovation and growth. The thinking goes, if AT&T and Comcast are required to let anyone use their lines for free, why would they spend billions of dollars building them in the first place? They also see the free market as a solution. If you don't like Comcast slowing your Netflix, switch to Verizon. The sticking point there is the majority of American consumers currently only have one provider of high-speed internet service to choose from. The debate will likely continue after the FCC rules on this February 26th.
Points of net neutrality is all content will be treated equally, and we'll talk about what that means tonight. So tonight's class is going to be a little different. I'm not going to have an agenda here. I'm not going to tell you whether I'm for net neutrality or against it. I'm going to try to present both sides of the story to you, give you kind of an equal view on both sides, and then let you decide. And then tonight when we're done, we're going to take a little poll, and we're going to see what you think. So we're going to go over the pros and the cons. So I wanted to start off with the history of net neutrality so you would kind of understand where it came from. It's kind of, I'm going to take you in the weeds a little bit, so hang in there. And if you have any questions as we go, just holler. So, gosh, 1990, the internet started, and that was Al Gore, right, who did that? Actually, the World Wide Web was started by a computer scientist by the name of Tim Berners-Lee in 1990. In 2003, the term, and I'm going to go kind of fast, so just put your hand up if I kind of go too fast. Net neutrality was coined in 2003 by law professor Tim Wu, who first used the phrase in a law review article. So things really started picking up on the internet in 2005 when ISPs, those are internet service providers. So in town here, like my internet service provider is Spectrum. I also could have Cincinnati Bell, but really I think those are about my only two options where I live. So let's pretend we're going to use Spectrum. We'll make them the guinea pig. Back in 2005, Spectrum decided to stop people from being able to use voice over internet technology on their phones. So this was a first case where a phone company came out and said, we're not going to let you use the internet because it would take away all our phone business. In 2005, the FCC issued their first internet policy statement of what ISPs could do and what they couldn't do. It was at that time AT&T's CEO came out and said, basically, if you expect us to let people use pipes, which is just kind of a wire that goes into your house for free, you're nuts. And that kind of started the discussion about net neutrality and what people should have to pay for and what speed should be. In 2006, the Senate considered a net neutrality law. In 2007, Skype, which was really one of the first kind of technologies that allowed people to see each other over the internet, went in and said, people should be able to attach whatever kind of devices to the internet that they want, but because they weren't able to at the time because people were saying the only thing you can have is the internet itself. It was called cardophone rules. And if people couldn't attach things to the internet freely, then all sorts of things like fax machines, voicemail, and dial-up internet would have never happened. In 2007, Comcast, who's kind of the big villain of net neutrality, it seems like, started blocking BitTorrent, and BitTorrent is kind of a term for file sharing programs. Does anybody remember what was the first file sharing program? Napster? You remember that? I'm taking you back a ways, but in 2007, Comcast started shutting down those kind of sites and saying, we're not going to let you share files over the internet because you're taking up too much of our space. And in 2007, Comcast denied that they were actually doing it and said, well, we're just delaying traffic a little bit. So in 2007, a suit was filed against Comcast. And in 2008, the FCC stepped in and they opened an investigation into that whole issue. In 2008, the FCC ordered Comcast to stop discriminating. And one of the things you'll learn as we learn about net neutrality tonight is that we're going to be talking about kind of for net neutrality, and then you're going to be talking about against. And against, the biggest issue is the marketplace. A lot of marketplace libertarian people feel like we should just let whatever happens on the internet happen. But the issue is, in the history I'm showing you, you'll see there have been several times throughout history that started in 2003 where companies have tried to throttle internet traffic, slow down websites, slow down Netflix, slow down things that when you sit in your house and you call up, you expect to get. And I think it's important as we look at the issues that if it's happened before in history, then what's to say that it won't happen in the future? So in 2008, Barack Obama won the presidency. He advocated net neutrality, that all traffic should be treated the exact same. And in 2010, the DC Circuit Court kind of rejected the FCC's ability to issue net neutrality rules. And in 2010, Google and Verizon tried to cut their own net neutrality deal just to keep it out of the government's hands, which the government didn't like. And in 2010, the FCC issued what's called the Open Internet Order. And essentially what that was a set of rules that put net neutrality into effect. Immediately when that happened, Verizon challenged the open order. They questioned the FCC's authority to impose open internet rules. But this is another case where AT&T in 2012, right around the time FaceTime, how many of you use FaceTime on Facebook? Right around the time FaceTime came out, AT&T started to block FaceTime and not let people get FaceTime. So the sidebar is the reason for the history lesson. There's been proven cases of problems where there has not been net neutrality. Voice over internet, ISPs tried to block it. Verizon actually censored websites. They censored a pro-abortion website. Skype, they had to fight to add to internet openness. Comcast interrupted file sharing traffic. AT&T stopped FaceTime. Comcast slowed down Netflix. So in 2003, Verizon conceded. They said basically the only thing that's keeping us from charging for people seeing websites is the FCC rules. And then 2014, anybody ever seen this guy? I haven't seen this show last week tonight with John Oliver. Anybody ever seen it? This guy brought this whole issue of net neutrality to just the forefront of really the world. We're going to see a little video of him in just a minute. And after his show aired, the FCC received 1.1 million comments about net neutrality and the importance of keeping the internet neutral. And that pushed to 3.7 million comments about net neutrality. On 2014, President Obama once again endorsed net neutrality, and the DC Circuit Court affirmed net neutrality. But what happened in 2016? Donald Trump was elected, and immediately the new chairman of the FCC made a decision to roll back net neutrality. And that's what happened beginning I think it happened in December. And on December 14th, 2017, FCC repealed net neutrality. Right immediately, senators started to announce they were going to try to undo the FCC's rules. What's really interesting about net neutrality is right now, 21 states have sued the FCC to restore net neutrality rules. And state attorney generals in California, New York, and Virginia have filed a petition to challenge the action. So the FCC has said states don't have any rights with respect to net neutrality, but as you'll find out in a couple minutes, states are trying all sorts of backdoor techniques to keep the internet neutral. So let's talk about the reasons for net neutrality. This is the very first video that kind of started millennials going crazy about net neutrality that caused 3.7 million comments to the FCC. This is John Oliver.
But here's the thing. net neutrality is actually...
Let's move on. We've got another video. We've got 3 short ones about for net neutrality and then a few against it. So this is from MIT.
Good afternoon. This is Andy Lippman at the MIT Media Lab broadcasting to you. But first, in order to do that, let me give you a brief explanation of what net neutrality is so you'll understand why you have to care about it.
The way to think about it is, think about your home and imagine that you have cable coming into your home. Okay, and I don't care who provides you that cable because this is not going to be a diatribe against any particular cable provider. It's just structural. So you've got cable coming into your home. So think of that cable as this big pipe, but inside that big pipe, there's 2 kinds of pathways. You can think of it as a highway with 2 lanes. I don't care. They all work, but you've got this cable coming in with 2 pathways. One of those pathways is cable television. And that's how you get your channel. And that's the bulk of the cable, as it turns out. And that's the bulk of the cable, as it turns out. The other cable that's coming into your home is your internet connection.
They're packaged in the same wire.
They're packaged in the same wire, and they're virtual, but there's effectively 2 wires coming into your home. Now let's look at what makes them different. In the cable wire, the person who owns the cable TV system decides what channels are on that wire. They have complete discretion over those channels within some limits. They have to carry the local broadcasters and so on and so forth, but largely they have discretion as to what's on there. If they decide that they want to allow the home shopping network to be on that cable and not allow QVC, then it doesn't matter whether you like QVC more than HSN or not. That's their decision and they can make it. In fact, if they have their own shopping network, the owner of this cable, that is,
They can refuse to carry both HSN.
they can refuse to carry both HSN and QVC. It's entirely theirs. It's up to them to do what they want. The other wire that comes into your house is the internet wire. Now the internet wire, sometimes it's filled to capacity, sometimes it's free, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, but that wire goes 2 ways and you can go anywhere on that wire. And what John Oliver 3 years ago convinced you to call the FCC, and they responded and did, was to ensure that on that internet wire, no one, not the owner of this cable, not anybody, can restrict or control where you can go with the internet. You can go to absolutely any site. You can go to internet version of HSN, you can go to the internet version of QVC. No one can throttle those or discriminate between them or eliminate them. Now, let's peer into the future a little bit, because sooner or later that cable wire is going to be more than just watching television channels, because it turns out that the type of bits by which you get those television channels are actually pretty much the same as the type of bits that flow through the internet. It's called IP, Internet Protocol. Right now, when you watch something like Netflix, for example, you're watching it on the internet wire. And that's an IP exchange of information. It's internet protocol. But your TV channels are also delivered by IP. They're not on the internet, but they happen to be using the same electrical mechanism to deliver those bits to you. So technically, it'd be pretty easy for Netflix to move itself over there by an agreement with the cable company and use this, call it fast lane, to deliver Netflix to you in a way that wouldn't interfere with your internet access. They could, that's fine. Now the people who are trying to repeal net neutrality are trying to say, we're going to eliminate this wire and we're going to transform the wire that goes into your home to one that is in effect entirely a cable wire, which means they can control where those bits go. They, just like HSN and QVC, they can decide that Netflix is allowed in that highway, and they can decide that Netflix is not allowed in that highway. Now that raises a couple of important questions. And the first question that it raises, and the most important question, is, what's wrong with what we have today? Most people like to watch television on their cable channel. I know a lot of you are called cord cutters and you watch TV on the internet channel. That's fine too. You can watch TV here, you can go to any website that you want. You can go shopping, you can talk to friends, you can use Facebook if you want, even on this internet channel. You can even do the same thing there. There's nothing wrong with having both of these. So this one, we won the battle, and it's neutral 2 years ago. So the first question you have to ask is, what's wrong with what we have today? Have people stopped investing in the internet? Have they stopped investing in cable? Is the industry stalled? Are you throttled? Are you stymied? Is anything wrong? No, there's nothing wrong. And we have this sort of fundamental rule in engineering. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So the only thing he was wrong about is net neutrality is no longer in effect. It was overruled in December. So I wanted to kind of just talk to you about one concern for e-commerce companies like myself. We run frameusa.com. So there's examples in place of internet service providers changing speed in the traffic of websites. So what I want to ask you is, will ISPs, let's say Spectrum, determine whether some e-commerce companies are more successful than others? For instance, if they don't like frameusa.com, will they decide, if there's a company called pictureframes.com, which there is, that they might pay Spectrum and just say, well, we're just going to make frameusa.com not available because pictureframes.com is a much better site. And, you know, e-commerce companies are under attack by so many different areas like Google. I don't know if you've noticed on Google, where if you call up a Google search now, the entire first half, the entire screen now is all advertising choices. It's not the people that have the best websites, that have the best organic sites. So, and then my question would be, what's to say with no net neutrality? Just to play devil's advocate, I think you saw that Verizon decided they didn't want certain websites to be on the internet, so they took them down. Maybe Empower You does kind of a racy class on something, and maybe Spectrum might say, well, we don't want to have those kind of really controversial topics on the internet, so we're just going to say we're not going to show Empower You on the internet. Somebody goes on to watch one of our previous classes, they can't. All these concerns are backed by cases of things happening. This last video is about a minute or so, and I think it's kind of fun.
How to offer something to drink? How to offer something to drink? We have a wonderful Manhattan, or maybe a martini, or we have a beautiful Cabernet.
Red Cabernet. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the red Cabernet.
Ah, wonderful. Monsieur? The same. Wonderful. Please be aware that the price on the menu does not include the $1 wine glass fee.
Okay.
What? How come? It's a mandatory charge. Yeah.
Weird. How about just a glass of water?
Wonderful. Water is free. There is a 50-cent charge for the glass, though.
What? What?
So, summarizing the case for net neutrality. Everything, all data should be treated equally. The internet needs to be a level playing field. The second one, the internet isn't broke. Why, you know, it isn't broken, why try and break it? Third, what is wrong with what we have today? Have people stopped investing in internet cable? The answer is no. Broadband providers shouldn't get to decide what to speed up or slow down, as was the case with Comcast and Netflix in 2014. Censorship of websites and website materials can occur. Verizon admitted that they did censor. And the question is, do you want your internet censored? Are you willing to take that as a possibility? There can be slowdown of websites in exchange for money. Is that something that you are willing to accept? No one should be able to control the internet side of the pipeline. Do we want only one wire coming into your house for everything? Now we have two wires, cable and internet. Do you only want one wire, cable? Will big companies use slowdown streaming speeds as a negotiating tactic to get more revenue? Will startup competitors be able to afford higher stream prices, or will they be second-class citizens? So somebody help me, what is the biggest, what would you say is the biggest competitor to Netflix right now? Amazon. And so they're probably pretty comparable, but maybe somebody like Hulu or somebody that's more new to the game. If somebody comes out of the box and has an incredible great idea to stream on the internet that we haven't even thought of yet, are they going to be unable to get in the game because these other companies like Netflix and Amazon are paying these ISPs like Spectrum so much money that they can't even begin to have the opportunity to get in? So that kind of goes along with, do you want big companies to be able to buy their way into the fast lane? Do we trust the big companies? Is there a problem with lack of providers? One of the big issues that you'll hear about as we start to talk about the other case, the case against net neutrality, is that the biggest argument is it's a free marketplace. It's a libertarian view. The free marketplace is always better than having government involved. Government you always lose with. But the one kind of flaw you'll hear about is the fact that most people only have one or two competitors. So if Spectrum says, we're not going to put EmpowerU's website on because they're too controversial, Nita Thomas is too controversial, well, I'm just going to go to another provider. But I've only got one other provider I could go to. So what happens if I don't like them? So it's not that easy. I think that graph earlier showed that most people only have two options for internet. And Google, Facebook, Netflix, they all favor net neutrality. How do you feel about that? I know Facebook is not very popular now. So that's kind of the case for net neutrality. Anybody have any questions before we talk about the reasons against it? Let's keep, yes, Mr. Janus.
Whether we are for or against net neutrality, based on the reversal from the Obama administration to the Trump administration, how do we as private citizens have any input if we're for net neutrality or against it? How can we affect that change? Thank you.
You'll have to go to the FCC. That's not a very good answer. Yes.
Do you really think that this could be effectively implemented and monitored?
The case for net neutrality, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the case against net neutrality and see the other side and see what you think. So here's Mark Cuban. He talks about we're moving the case against net neutrality, and
what are your feelings on net neutrality? What are your feelings on net neutrality?
Oh, I think net neutrality is the dumbest stuff ever, right? Really, the base of net neutrality is not a technical argument. It's not a business argument. It's purely and simply a demonization of a couple big companies. Because it's Comcast and their customer service is awful for cable, they must suck and they're going to ruin the internet for everybody. So let's come up with new rules and regulations that the FCC is going to try to enforce with a new set of commissioners every 5 or so years, right? AT&T must be the bad guy, so let's go and create all these new rules to protect it, to keep things as they are. It's ridiculous. It's just demonization of big companies. That's all it is. And to me, as a capitalist, that's wrong.
So that's what Mark Cuban says. I'm trying to think if he's one of the shareholders, if he's involved in the ownership of Comcast. I don't know or not, know for sure or not. The next video against net neutrality will be Rush Limbaugh. Now, it goes kind of fast, but I want to summarize what he's going to tell you, and that is the reason he's so much against it is because the government, who would be involved if the internet was neutral, was also responsible in stopping FM radio in the around 1936 to 1940 for a long period of time. And that's one of the problems with net neutrality, that the government might just decide to come up with their own rules, stifle technology, not let it get out. And that's one of the cases that you'll hear against net neutrality.
It is in a nutshell. Net neutrality as advocated by the people that your friends like and support is asking for the government to regulate it. Corporations don't regulate things, they compete. It's the federal government that regulates, and your pals are seeking that. Your pals believe that government enforces fairness and equality and sameness, and that's not at all what's going to happen. In the history of the spectrum is all the proof that you need. The internet, up until 2 or 3 years ago when people started getting crazy about net neutrality. The internet is the one communications medium that was not regulated. And look at how it expanded. And look at how free it was, Rob. The New York Times, the Washington Post, you name it. Enter the internet and everything is free. They're charging their subscribers the same thing, but on the internet it was free. Everything was. Everybody got on board. There wasn't any regulation. There wasn't any limitation. You could go. It was the Wild West. It was the essence of customer and market freedom. Do you know when cellular technology was invented?
I can't say I do.
Well, would you be surprised to learn that it was first invented in 1940?
Wow.
It was suppressed by the government in collusion with broadcast communities, broadcast companies, to keep it from coming to market until the 90s, well, early to mid 80s, late 80s actually. FM radio was invented and shelved for 30 years by a consortium of the government and AM broadcasters who did not want competition. Net neutrality would equal the government making partnerships with various corporations based on the politics of the president and the administration at the time, and they would make deals to benefit the corporation. You do not want the government involved in this at all. If you want a free internet, if you want an internet that's going to be affordable at what rates you have the ability to pay, if you want different tiers. But if you want the internet to become your cable company, then support net neutrality.
I think he's pretty clear on his position. We've got one last video against net neutrality, and it's right here. You may know who this guy is too.
Completely unrelated. What are your thoughts on net neutrality? The whole.
Oh, you're all wrong about it. Because everybody in this room thinks net neutrality is a good idea, and it isn't. You all think it's going to go to some sort of hellish corporate America ruled, dystopian hell where your email is going to get slowed down to a crawl because you can't afford the expensive whatever. Horse shit. All it's doing is taking the internet back to where it was a couple of years ago anyway. And by the way, this is going to be technical, this is going to bore some of you, but I'm going to give you a serious answer since you asked. Net neutrality basically means that every packet of data, every little lump of information on the internet should be treated equally, agnostically of what it contains. So it forbids, for instance, your cable provider, the people who do your internet, in America it'd be like AT&T or Comcast or whatever, from selling you a service where Netflix is faster, right? So you could pay more to get better quality of video with no buffering and all the rest of it. HBO and Netflix come like beautiful, crisp 4K, like that, because you paid more for it. In my view, this is, the FCC started this under Obama, this net neutrality thing. It's not, the George Soros funded organizations that are pushing net neutrality and advocating for more government control of the internet have told you two big lies. The first one is that the government should regulate the internet rather than the free market. It is much better, in my view, to have customers and private companies negotiate their own relationship and the market to decide what it can bear, what people are prepared to put up with, and for competition to produce the best results. And second of all, they have told you that this is, about making sure that there's an open, free, internet of an equality internet where everyone gets equal access to whatever. That has never been the case. Every service provider, every server already shapes data. They already shape traffic, excuse me. All of the stuff that net neutrality is designed to eradicate, it never will, because Vodafone is always going to mess around with things. What are your cell networks over here, whatever, Telstra, whatever, they're always going to send some things faster than others, and that will never change. Net neutrality is a cosmetic announcement on the one hand, but really what it represents is the license for the federal government, for the FCC, to wade in and interfere in the relationship between private people and their providers, and to stop companies from providing richer, better, tailored packages to you, the consumer. It is about more government control over a critical utility. So if you're one of those people who reflexively thinks net neutrality sounds like a good idea, you're right, it does sound like a good idea, but you're wrong. It's terrible, and it's just another mechanism of government control, and I want the government out of that completely, out of that relationship. Just leave us to deal with the service providers, and if they screw up, we'll sign up with somebody else.
So let's summarize the case against net neutrality. With net neutrality, there will be more government oversight and regulations which will stifle growth. The rules, and Nita, you asked the question, under net neutrality, the rules are really hard to define. One of the cases against net neutrality, hey, the free market is better. If you don't like Comcast, switch to Verizon, but don't demonize companies just because they're big. Do we want the FCC and the government running the internet to protect us against the big companies? Or as the previous video said, do we want to be able to negotiate with those companies ourselves? Will government enforce fairness, or will it be just the other way around? So I talked to you about the Empower You website, and if it's not net neutral, would somebody possibly stop that from being broadcast? Well, the question is, would the government have their own agenda? Would they say there's too many of these kind of websites when a new administration takes place? And would they, in fact, censor it? That might be possible. Will the government, if we go to net neutrality, or we go back to net neutrality, suppress new technology like FM, cell phone technology, as a perk to their favorite groups? The internet is the one medium which has not been regulated. Look at how it has expanded. Look at how well the free market's done. The internet will be less expensive if the government is involved. I think many of you would probably agree with that. There will be more economical packages for consumers to purchase. This just takes the internet back to where it was 2 to 3 years ago, unregulated before Obama. There's little actual evidence that web speeds are being throttled. The free market's better because competition produces results. Every service provider already shapes data, so each different service provider has a different speed that they offer things now. And net neutrality is just a cosmetic license for the government to interfere between private people and their providers. Get the government out of the relationship. So those are kind of a few of the ideas against net neutrality. So before we take comments and questions, I want to just take you through the current situation that's going on after the government in December got rid of the net neutrality rules.
So as you all know, when the FCC voted to repeal Title II net neutrality protections,
this was in December.
They included a clause in that repeal order that preempts states and prohibits them from enacting their own. So as you all know, when the FCC voted to repeal Title II net neutrality protections, they included a clause in that repeal order that preempts states and prohibits them from enacting their own net neutrality laws. So that was something that the internet service providers actually pressured the FCC to include in that repeal order, because knowing that net neutrality is overwhelmingly popular, these ISPs like Comcast and Verizon knew that once the FCC voted to repeal net neutrality, states would immediately try to enact their own rules, and they're right. So the FCC voted to stop states from doing this. But in spite of that, states are now defying the FCC and effectively giving Ajit Pai the middle finger, and they're still passing their own net neutrality rules. So Sean Captain of Fast Company explains, along with the expected flood of lawsuits by activist groups fighting to preserve net neutrality, states have also taken up the cause. We all agree that in an ideal world, it should be handled at the federal level, says California State Senator Scott Wiener. But if the federal government's going to abdicate, then we need to take action, and I'm glad that a number of states are looking at this. Along with pursuing lawsuits over irregularities in the FCC process, like millions of fake citizen comments being submitted, several states are crafting their own net neutrality laws, which they will start debating as new legislative sessions commence this month. they would prohibit internet service providers from blocking or hindering access to legal online content sources or from offering premium bandwidth fast lane deals to others. Washington State was first to act, with Democratic and Republican state representatives debuting nearly identical bills back on December 13th and 14th. Regardless of their politics, state net neutrality advocates face a tough course through unfamiliar territory. In its lengthy order abolishing net neutrality policy, the FCC asserted the federal government's right to preempt other laws or policies, allowing state and local governments to adopt their own separate requirements, which could impose far greater burdens than the federal regulatory regime, could significantly disrupt the balance we strike here, reads the FCC's abolition order. Telecommunications in particular, it's very, very hairy to try to do this without triggering federal preemption, says Jake Egloff, the legislative aide to New York Democrat Assembly member Patricia Fahey. They have also crafted legislation establishing net neutrality requirements rather than regulate ISPs directly. It would exert financial pressure by only allowing the state and local governments to contract with ISPs certified as meeting New York's net neutrality requirements. I don't want to say backdoor, but it is a side door, says Fahey, who's
would require internet providers that work with the state to comply with net neutrality rules. So New York, for instance, could say anybody that's going to provide internet service has to get a license from us, the state of New York. And as part of that license, states would be required to comply with net neutrality rules. So essentially, they've just kind of gone around the government. A bill in Washington would ban blocking, throttling, and paid fast lanes on the internet. The federal rules did the same thing before they were repealed in December. Lawmakers in New York and California are also working on additional net neutrality legislation. So the net neutrality debate, even though the Trump FCC has overturned net neutrality, if 40 states all decide that they're going to come up with some way for net neutrality may in fact exist. Questions, comments? What do you think? Which way? Tell me how you're leaning, for net neutrality or against it. Who's got a thought? Someone, right here.
There's several issues here. It's part freedom of speech, I think, part of it, and the other part is seeing things in a content of speed. So there's a lot of dynamics in this, and I don't think they're addressing some of those dynamics.
Who else has a comment? Nita.
I guess I'm still really confused how the states can pass a bill, because the internet isn't like in the old days where you had boundaries, physical boundaries to go across the country. So how can New York really stop other people from coming into New York? It seems like it's almost technically impossible.
Well, the FCC has said states don't have any authority to do this, but It's just like if one of these courts in California stops something and delays it for 3 years until they sue someone else, they could just continually kind of move the bar along, if you get what I'm saying.
I just can't quite figure out how technically it would work.
Who else has a comment? Jay has a comment in the back.
One of the reasons that this is so very confusing to so many people is because there is a complete disconnect to the notion of what net neutrality should be, what people think it should be, and what actually was done at near the end of the last administration, the Obama administration. The rules that the FCC used, first of all, the first time the FCC tried it, they got shot down in the courts. And they may very well have gotten shot down in the courts again if the new FCC chairman hadn't rolled it back. They really didn't have the authority, according to the original legislation that was based on, they based it on a 1934 law that never envisioned anything like the internet. And so what they essentially did, because there were so many things in that Title II that had nothing to do with the internet, but in fact could allow the government to have undue control over certain things, they just said, well, we promise never to do that. That's what the Obama administration basically said when they passed the rules in 2015. So what we really need to do is get Congress to look at this figure out the things that are the biggest concerns and come up with new legislation. And by the way, the investment by the internet service providers did go down after it didn't stop, but it did go down because of all the uncertainty about what the government might try to do in the net neutrality rules. So it's when the political net neutrality is something much different than the actual concepts and the benefits of net neutrality that we've been talking about, and we need to have Congress address it with targeted legislation.
Who else has a comment? Tell us what you think. You're for net neutrality or against? Who has a, right up here.
I don't know, this may not be very profound, but it seems to me like the state should not be allowed at all. Our Constitution says that the federal government regulates interstate commerce. And certainly the interstate, or the internet, is about as interstate as you can get. You know, we have people shopping across state lines, programs, movies, all that is commerce. It crosses state lines. That's exactly what interstate commerce is, and that's to be regulated, if it is to be regulated, by the federal government. The states can't do that.
It seems clear, doesn't it? But if 40 states end up dragging everything down for years, they might. Who else has a comment?
I agree with Nita. I think it's very confusing, but if I'm understanding net neutrality, the government wants to help all of us get equal opportunity to the internet. And it reminds me of the saying, I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help you.
I'm here to help you, right. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's true.
You know, generally, I just would make an editorial comment that 99% of the time I would totally agree with you, except for the fact there's so many cases where the big companies have already kind of shown their hand. And I think it should be concerning if all of a sudden the rules that you think exist don't exist anymore, and people are choosing which sites they can actually look at. And the common argument from the against net neutrality is that, well, don't worry, you can just, if somebody was to block Empower You, you could just go to another provider. But there's only 2 providers really available to anyone. So that really isn't true. So if I hadn't seen 6 or 7 cases of big companies actually throttling and stopping internet traffic and demanding money, then that's the thing that's got me concerned. Who else has a thought? Right here.
Dan, I think you hit the nail on the head there with mentioning competition. That's what I was going to bring up. One of the solutions would be competition. We need to have more internet service providers. And I want to mention something that's not going to be 100% on topic or on point, but there's a certain internet service provider here in town that will not allow you to hook up your own modem at home. But then if you talk to another customer service representative, they say, yes, you can hook up your own modem, but we're still going to charge you the monthly modem rental fee. And I've heard at least one person has written the FCC about this and complained, and they got back, you know, the standard.
And that was one of those earlier slides where we talked about where it refused, certain ISPs refused you the ability to hook things up to the internet unless they were involved or unless they were making money from it. Who else has 1 or 2 more quick comments? And then we're a little late. So right here, this gentleman, Gene Utz, who is in technology. I'll be interested to hear what he has to say.
Well, Dan, you make some really good points about censorship and throttling speed, especially with a company like yours. But I'm a free market guy, and I want the government as much out of my life as I can possibly get it. And I can't think of a single program that the government knows how to run. We can't even manage a war anymore. How long have we been in Afghanistan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good points. All good points. Who else has a point? Right here.
It seems like we all lose in this, because if it goes one way or the other, the big companies are going to dictate what, but you're going to have the free market. They're going to have to compete with the little guys too. But at the same time, if they don't want your content or your content wants to be on, you're going to have to pay more for it.
And that's why I've tried to paint kind of an even brush tonight, because I see good and bad points about each side. And as soon as Gene says what he says about being libertarian-minded and hearing the crowd, then I immediately wonder, with 1.5 service providers, are we just going to get kind of played a little bit? One or two last thoughts. We have a question online.
It's actually a comment from Sue Ellen, who says,
Sue Ellen.
I am against net neutrality because of the government control. And without knowing any technology, if George Soros is for it, I'm against it.
Yeah.
He's no friend of America or freedom.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember which video was that mentioned his name. Was that Milo's video? Yeah. Actually, I'll be honest with you. I spent quite a bit of time taking a look at this. Didn't hear George Soros's name the entire time I researched everything except in that video. So I'm not sure. What was the person's name? Who's online? Sue Ellen. So Sue Ellen, I'm not sure that's that's totally fair. But one more comment.
So I think everybody's point about the number of internet providers is well taken. However, the one thing I do trust is the market. And if I get shut out from 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different websites, I think that other internet service providers will emerge to fill that niche, and you'll have more competition, although it'll take some time to work that out. But I think that will be an issue that's solved.
There was a good video, one video I wasn't able to show you because of time, where they talked about the market kind of fixing a few of the problems. We all want to think that the market always will. So what I want you to do before you leave is I want you to vote whether you're for net neutrality or not. Anybody online, send us your votes to info@empoweruohio.org. Tomorrow on EmpowerU's blog site, I'm going to tell you how you all voted and what you all think about net neutrality. And with that in mind, thank you for coming. Sorry we're just a couple minutes late, and have a great rest of your night. Sure. Okay.